One day, as Kuroe waters the flowers, she thinks back to her childhood when she confessed to her crush. The boy had run away in terror after seeing her monstrous hand. He called her a monster, and those words have never left her memory. Later, the girls in her class fawn over Arata, a very popular boy. Since he is about to start modeling, some of his classmates want to take photos of him while they still have the chance. Kuroe purposely gets in their way because one of the girls is sitting in her seat. The girl refuses to move, so Arata offers to step outside so the girl will move. Realizing that he is about to stand, Kuroe quickly gathers her things and leaves the classroom. The girls find her odd and make fun of her, while Arata quietly watches her leave. His gaze then drifts to the flowers Kuroe had been tending earlier. Meanwhile, Kuroe locks herself inside a bathroom stall. She repeatedly pounds on the door in frustration over Arata. Ever since they were seated beside each other, students have constantly gathered around his desk. She suddenly notices a throbbing in her hand. Pulling back her sleeve, she reveals a monstrous hand underneath. She knows the only way to return to normal is to calm herself down. She takes out her phone and headset, listens to her favorite music, and scrolls through pictures of food she wants to eat. The distraction works and her hand slowly returns to normal. Unlike everyone else, Kuroe suffers from a mysterious condition that causes parts of her body to mutate. The first time it happened was after she confessed to her childhood crush. After that incident, her mother, Rinko, told her to stop spending time with friends. Kuroe tried to isolate herself, but when some classmates suddenly invited her to play, she couldn't bring herself to refuse. She remembers how happy she felt until strange appendages sprouted from her back. The other children saw them and immediately became afraid of her. For years, she held onto the hope that someone would eventually accept her. However, over time, she realized just how superficial the world is. During lunch break, Kuroe heads to the emergency staircase to sketch. She believes no one will bother her there. When she looks up, she finds Arata staring at her and lets out a scream of surprise. Arata explains that he came here to escape the crowd gathering around him in the classroom and is surprised to find Kuroe here as well. Kuroe is caught off guard when he addresses her by her last name instead of using the strange nicknames everyone else calls her. Arata notices her sketchbook and compliments her artwork, saying it looks amazing. Embarrassed, Kuroe quickly snatches it away. He asks why she chose to draw in grayscale. She hurriedly replies that it simply looks cooler that way. When Arata sits beside her, his closeness causes Kuroe's back to begin transforming. However, the mutation suddenly stops when Arata comments that being alone every now and then actually feels nice. Arata admits he has recently been questioning his own self-worth because he doesn't understand what makes him so special. Kuroe feels her body returning to normal, although she can't relate to his concerns. To her, it simply sounds like he's fishing for compliments. She bluntly tells him that if he doesn't like having cameras pointed at him, then he should tell people to back off. Certain her harsh honesty will drive him away, Kuroe looks at him again, only to find him staring at her with admiration. Arata agrees with everything she said and promises to be more honest about his feelings. He decides to leave so she can continue sketching in peace, but before going, he lends her his scarf to keep warm. Kuroe is shocked that he remains so kind, even towards someone like her. She becomes convinced that someone as nice as Arata must have ulterior motives. She chases after him, throws the scarf back into his face, and immediately runs away, swearing she won't be fooled by his act like everyone else. Later that day, Kuroe returns home and tries to quietly sneak past Rinko and her dog, Jumbo King. Unfortunately, they immediately notice her and Rinko welcomes her home with a hug. While embracing her daughter, Rinko feels the spikes protruding from Kuroe's back, but Kuroe rushes to her room, insisting it's nothing unusual, even if her back rarely mutates. Meanwhile, Jumbo King accidentally knocks something over, forcing Rinko to pick it up. Inside her room, Kuroe examines the spikes on her back. She thinks they look disgusting and strange since they normally disappear after a while. Still, she believes that even if she completely turns into a monster, it wouldn't make much difference. She feels her life will always remain gray. The next day, she is horrified to find Arata occupying her usual sketching spot. He happily talks about his fiber plus cola. All Kuroe wants is to return to her peaceful routine. Arata explains that he has realized how much he enjoys feeling needed by others. He says her blunt advice opened his eyes and made him want to appreciate life more. Then he shows her the cafe she has been secretly wanting to visit and invites her to go there after school with him and a few friends. Kuroe immediately accepts. However, when they arrive after school, she discovers that only she and Arata are there. As they head inside, Kuroe desperately tries to calm herself. She tells herself it may actually be easier without a large group, but the outing now feels more like a date, making her worry that her body might transform again. The silence while waiting for their food only makes things more awkward. At long last, their pancakes arrive and Kuroe timidly asks if she can eat first. Arata happily encourages her to take the first bite. The moment she tastes the pancakes, she feels as though she has ascended to heaven. Her delighted expression completely catches Arata off guard. He lets out a soft laugh, admitting he never expected her to smile like that because she always seems distant at school. Still, he believes she's an amazing person. He points out that she always takes cleanup duties seriously and carefully tends to the classroom flowers every single day. Kuroe stares at him, and suddenly the pancakes taste less sweet than his words. Arata then offers her his own share of pancakes. He shows her an old photo of himself from middle school where he was much chubbier, explaining that he gains weight very easily. He admits he's terrified of becoming lonely again if he returns to looking like that. Kuroe remembers believing he could never understand someone like her, but now she realizes she was wrong. She picks up a piece of pancake, offers it to him, and firmly tells him to eat it because she doesn't care about his weight. If anything, she will still like to be his friend if he changes. Before she can take back what she said, Arata gently grasps her hand and eats the piece of pancake she offered him, admitting that it really is delicious. The two spend the rest of the day together as if they have always been good friends, and Kuroe thinks to herself that, at least for today, she'll allow herself to be fooled. As they begin walking home, Arata notices Kuroe seems a little tired and offers to walk her all the way home. Her body has started transforming again, and she assumes it's because she's overstimulated. Just then, several girls who like Arata spot him and are about to approach. However, the moment they notice Kuroe beside him, they assume she's been stalking him and start talking about exposing her online as a creep. Hearing them say that causes Kuroe's monstrous hand to recede. Kuroe is about to apologize and head home alone when Arata suddenly takes her hand and leads her away, completely ignoring the girls. Kuroe is stunned that he continues holding her hand even as it transforms into its monstrous form. For the first time in her life, it feels as though her gray world has suddenly turned pink. However, she suddenly feels strange. She apologizes before suddenly running away from him. As she runs, more parts of her body begin to mutate. She can no longer suppress the burning sensation and stops at a bridge. Unable to control her body any longer, she loses her footing and falls into the river below. There, her body continues transforming until something enormous rises from the depths. Meanwhile, Arata desperately searches for her. When he reaches the bridge, a kaiju suddenly emerges from the river. It happens to be Kuroe, and the moment she sees Arata, she becomes convinced that even he could never accept her now. She lets out a deafening roar toward the sky, believing that love can only bring terror into her life. Before long, news of the mysterious kaiju spreads. People watch in amazement while helicopters fly overhead, trying to capture footage of Kuroe. Back at home, Rinko immediately prepares her car, already aware the kaiju is Kuroe. Meanwhile, Arata continues staring up at her. Kuroe feels as though she is trapped inside a dream. At the same time, she finally allows herself to release all the frustration she has bottled up for years. From inside her car, Rinko desperately begs Kuroe not to leave the river, knowing it will only make the situation worse. When Rinko arrives at the bridge, she notices Arata still looking toward the water below. When he calls out Kuroe's name, Rinko carefully asks if it's the Kuroe she knows. She treads carefully, not mentioning that Kuroe is her daughter, and wants to know if he was with her before the kaiju appeared. After Arata confirms it, Rinko says that Kuroe is from her neighborhood and that she already saw her evacuate. Before leaving, he asks Rinko to tell Kuroe that he had a wonderful time with her. After he walks away, she quietly mutters that he had better take responsibility. As she heads back to her car, she suddenly realizes Jumbo King has disappeared. The military has already begun attacking the kaiju while Arata continues evacuating. However, he soon spots Jumbo King running straight toward the danger. Fearing for the dog's safety, Arata chases after him. Jumbo King leads him back to the bridge just as a military helicopter opens fire on Kuroe. The explosion sends debris crashing down. When he looks up again, Kuroe is preparing to launch an attack. At that moment, she notices Arata lying on the ground and freezes when she sees the way he is looking at her. Confused, she catches her own reflection in the glass of a nearby building. She realizes everyone is looking at her like she truly is a monster. Overcome with panic, Kuroe desperately wishes people would stop looking at her that way. She dives back into the river and disappears downstream. As Jumbo King struggles free from Arata's arms, Arata realizes the kaiju had been looking directly at him. The dog quickly runs back to Rinko, barking as though he knows exactly where Kuroe has gone. Near a riverside park, Kuroe finally emerges from the water. Most of her body has already returned to normal before she collapses unconscious. When she wakes up, she finds herself back in her own room. She remembers very little about what happened and lazily gets dressed for school, completely unaware of everything that took place. Downstairs, Rinko greets her and mentions that she washed Kuroe's uniform so well that it looks almost brand new. She then serves Kuroe a plate of pancakes. After taking a bite, Kuroe thinks the pancakes yesterday were also good. She turns on the television, where the news is reporting on the kaiju that appeared last night. As the report continues, memories of her transformation slowly come flooding back. The news reveals that the public has started calling the mysterious creature Harugan, named after the place where it first appeared. Rinko finally decides to tell her the truth. She confirms that Kurowi really was the kaiju from the news and explains that her transformation has become much more extreme because Kurowi has fallen in love with someone. One morning, Kurowi walks to school while thinking about everything Rinko told her. Along the way, she sees the destruction Harugan caused, making her realize it had never been a dream. When she arrives at school, she overhears several girls talking about how Arata was injured during the incident. Wanting to know if he is alright, Kurowi asks how badly he was hurt. Instead of answering, the girls grow irritated and demand to know why she had been holding Arata's hand that evening. A flustered expression spreads across Kurowi's face. Kurowi quickly escapes to her usual spot to get away from them. As she gazes outside, she finds herself wanting to be near him. Looking toward the school gate, she spots Arata arriving and instinctively gets excited. She starts rushing downstairs to greet him before suddenly stopping herself. She remembers that strong emotions could cause her to transform into Harugan. She wonders if staying away from him is the only way to keep everyone safe. Gripping the railing tightly, she forces herself to just watch. Just then, another student named Manatsu runs over to check on Arata. Kurowi notices how naturally familiar the two seem together. She immediately assumes Manatsu is his girlfriend. She suddenly feels foolish for being jealous. At that moment, Arata notices her and happily calls out to her. Panicking, Kurowi shouts back that he should never come near her again before running back inside the building. Back in the classroom, Kurowi shuts herself off from the world by putting on her headset. When Arata enters and immediately attracts another crowd of classmates, she places her school bag on her desk to block them from invading her space. During class, Arata glances toward Kurowi. After class ends, Kurowi notices Manatsu peeking into the classroom. Not wanting to watch her talk to Arata, Kurowi quickly runs away. Thinking of Arata and Manatsu together fills her mind, and a tail suddenly sprouts out. Frantically hiding it beneath her skirt, she tries to figure out what caused the transformation. Later, Kurowi meets Rinko at the park. Rinko is relieved that the blossoms survived Kurowi's rampage. Kurowi asks why Rinko is still allowing her to walk around freely when she believes she should be locked away. Rinko casually brushes the idea aside, saying she would never imprison her only daughter. She promises that no matter what happens, she will always protect Kurowi. Those words comfort Kurowi, making her believe it might actually be possible to never become a kaiju again. She tells herself that the feeling she experienced yesterday may have been the last time she would ever feel that way, since she has already cut ties with Arata. However, after returning home, her tail stubbornly refuses to disappear. She steps onto the balcony for some fresh air when she notices a strange, caterpillar-like creature lying on the street below. She worries it will eventually grow into a kaiju she will have to fight. Determined to stop it early, she grabs a mallet and cautiously approaches the creature. As she gets close, it suddenly rolls over, revealing its zipper. Without the slightest embarrassment, Manatsu cheerfully greets Kurowi. Kurowi wants to ask why Manatsu is dressed like that and even wonders if Arata somehow encouraged it. Instead, Manatsu excitedly reveals that she's waiting for someone. As she describes the person she's expecting, Kurowi unintentionally imagines Arata matching every description. However, Manatsu finally reveals that the one she is waiting for is Harugan. She explains that because of her father's work, she grew up surrounded by kaiju movies and merchandise. She always believed they were nothing more than fiction, but last night proved they are real. That is why she desperately wants to meet Harugan in person. Unfortunately, last night she was unable to see Harugan herself. Even so, she plans to wait here until Harugan appears again. Kurowi suddenly asks if the kaiju is why Manatsu approached Arata. Manatsu admits she wanted to hear his first-hand impression of Harugan since he had been nearby. The love-struck look she saw earlier on Manatsu was because Manatsu was so excited talking about Harugan. Even now, Manatsu wails with excitement while discussing Harugan. Manatsu also mentions that she originally wanted to talk to Kurowi at school but couldn't because Kurowi ran away. Kurowi feels relieved knowing Manatsu isn't Arata's girlfriend. At the same time, she feels terrible, realizing Arata probably hates her for her words earlier. Their conversation is interrupted when a police officer approaches and informs Manatsu that she isn't allowed to sleep on the street. Feeling sorry for her, Kurowi suddenly blurts out that Harugan won't be coming tonight. Manatsu pauses before remembering that Arata said Harugan appeared shortly after Kurowi disappeared. She begins wondering aloud whether Kurowi can somehow communicate with Harugan through their minds. She even concludes that Kurowi must be Harugan's priestess. Kurowi awkwardly replies that she might be. Taking that as confirmation, Manatsu excitedly asks Kurowi to summon Harugan. Kurowi claims that Harugan is too tired now. Just then, two figures dressed suspiciously as Ultramen arrive. They turn out to be Manatsu's servants, who have come to bring her home. Manatsu's eccentric personality leaves both Kurowi and the police officer completely bewildered. The next day, Kurowi carefully hides her tail beneath her skirt before heading to school. As soon as she arrives, Manatsu rushes over to thank her for the enjoyable evening, and eagerly suggests that they become friends. They spot Arata surrounded by girls once again. Kuroe immediately hides out of sight. Manatsu quietly asks whether Kuroe likes Arata. Since neither of them knows whether Arata already has a girlfriend, Manatsu offers to help bring them together, saying it's only fair since Kuroe will be her Cupid with Harugan. Without hesitation, Manatsu boldly walks up to Arata and asks if he has a girlfriend. Arata honestly answers that he doesn't. The surrounding girls celebrate for a brief moment before Arata calmly admits that he's already interested in someone. As he says it, he looks directly at Kuroe. Her heart begins racing while her hidden tail twitches beneath her skirt. The familiar sensation of being overwhelmed returns and Kuroe immediately runs away. She ends up alone in the courtyard when Manatsu catches up. Manatsu happily congratulates her because they confirmed Arata is single. However, Kuroe begs Manatsu to leave her alone. She insists that romance can only end with her getting hurt. Manatsu simply smiles and gently tells Kuroe that, as another girl in love, she can clearly see the flames of love burning in Kuroe's eyes. She helps Kuroe to her feet and says they should support each other in finding love, regardless of how things end. She then invites Kuroe to her house after school so they can eat snacks together and watch kaiju movies to cheer themselves up. Later, during PE, Kuroe quietly watches Arata playing basketball with the boys outside. She convinces herself there's no way someone like him could actually like her. Her thoughts are interrupted when a volleyball suddenly hits her. The other girls angrily complain that she skipped participating again and order her to at least help clean up. Kuroe quietly does as she's told and wheels the cart of volleyballs back to the storage room. However, in the girls' locker room. From outside, they mock her for believing Arata could ever like her, insisting that someone like him would never choose someone like her. Inside the dark storage room, Kuroe's tail begins thrashing wildly as she shouts that she already knows that. The girls hear equipment crashing and assume Kuroe is throwing a tantrum, so they decide to leave her locked inside. Meanwhile, Kuroe panics because her tail keeps growing larger, making it impossible to hide. After PE ends, the teacher notices Kuroe is missing. One of the girls quickly lies, claiming Kuroe went to the nurse's office. When classes finish, Arata heads there to check on her, but she isn't there. He runs into Manatsu, who is also searching for Kuroe. Meanwhile, people struggle to open the storage room. Kuroe is the one holding the door shut from the inside because she refuses to let anyone see her tail. If someone discovers her secret, she imagines being taken away to a laboratory and experimented on. She's convinced that would eventually cause her to transform into Harugan again. If that happens, she wonders whether Arata would look at her with fear. Sitting down, she wishes she had simply been born an ordinary girl. Back in the classroom, the girls begin wondering whether they should finally let Kuroe out. Unfortunately for them, Manatsu overhears the entire conversation. Demanding to know what they did, she dramatically declares that Harugan will surely go on a rampage after they imprison the Beast Priestess. She urges the girls to apologize immediately. Instead, they insist they did nothing wrong because Kuroe crossed the line by getting too close to Arata. At that moment, Arata reveals that he heard everything. He blames himself the most because he kept trying to stay friendly with everyone even while the girls continued hurting Kuroe. Realizing that his silence only enabled them, he decides to stop pretending everything is fine. He admits he cares far too much about Kuroe to lose her. Arata runs toward the gym to rescue her, leaving his admirers speechless while Manatsu quietly cheers him on. When Arata reaches the storage room, he quickly forces the sliding door open. Startled, Kuroe instinctively lashes out with her tail. Flustered, she nervously asks whether he saw anything. From outside, Arata reassures her that it was too dark for him to see clearly. Rather than forcing his way in, Arata begins talking to her through the door. He confesses that he lied the day he invited her to eat pancakes. There was never supposed to be a group outing. He hadn't bought tickets for just the two of them because he genuinely wanted to spend time with her. He explains that her blunt honesty left a lasting impression on him. Even though everything happening in Tokyo makes the timing terrible, he still wants to get to know her better. Listening from the other side of the door, Kuroe is stunned by how sincere he sounds. At the same time, she feels that familiar wave of overwhelming affection welling up inside her. In a quiet voice, she finally tells him he can come inside. As Arata steps into the storage room, he looks surprised. Kuroe shyly admits she has an ugly side and warns that if they become closer, he'll eventually discover even more disgusting things about her. She tells him she can't believe anyone could truly love a girl with a tail. Without realizing it, her tail slowly begins shrinking. Arata looks confused by her comment since he can't see any tail at all. He reaches over and switches on the lights. The moment the room brightens, he notices the torn hole in the back of Kuroe's uniform. Mortified, Kuroe immediately dives beneath a pile of gym mats to hide herself. Arata sits beside her, then gently tells her that if she hates herself, he'll simply find more reasons to love her and tell her. Kuroe peeks out to look at him. Arata leans a little closer, relieved that they can finally face each other properly. He tells her to go retrieve her school bag and let Manatsu know she's safe. Once he has walked a safe distance away, Kuroi's body suddenly transforms into Harugan. Arata stares toward the gym as the enormous kaiju emerges. Meanwhile, Manatsu beams with excitement, thrilled to finally meet Harugan in person. Harugan silently searches for Arata. In her heart, Kuroi apologizes to him. She knows she can never have the normal romance he deserves, but she silently promises to not trample on his feelings. Several people watch as Harugan makes another escape through the river, with Manatsu being the only one who is genuinely sad to see the kaiju leave. By the time Kuroi reaches the park, she has already transformed back into her human form. Realizing she still needs to return to school, she finds a large trash bag to wrap around herself as a makeshift cover. As she runs back, she avoids several reporters interviewing students. She heads to her classroom to retrieve her uniform. There she sees Arata insisting that a student is still trapped inside the gymnasium. Kuroi immediately runs over to reassure him. The two decide to walk home together. Arata expresses his concern since Kuroi was nearby when Harugan appeared. He admits he's had the strange feeling that Harugan was staring directly at him during both encounters. Kuroi hurriedly tells him he's probably imagining things. She quietly compliments him for staying so calm in front of something she considers ugly. Instead of agreeing, something suddenly clicks in Arata's mind. He softly replies that he actually thought it was beautiful. For a brief moment, Kuroi believes he's talking about Harugan. However, Arata mentions that the cherry blossoms are pretty. Kuroi hurriedly agrees, trying to hide what she was thinking. After calming herself down, Kuroi quietly admits she's glad none of the cherry blossom trees were crushed. One day, Kuroi visits Manatsu's house to prepare for her upcoming date. Unfortunately, most of Manatsu's wardrobe consists of bizarre monster costumes. However, Manatsu finds a beautiful dress for Kuroi. Although Kuroi admits the dress is lovely, she insists that she's the real problem. Manatsu encourages her to have a little more confidence in herself, especially given how Kuroi was asked out. After the Harugan incident, just as Kuroi was about to head home, Arata stopped her. He shyly invited her to spend the weekend with him at a theme park. He mentions winning a pair of tickets to one and wants Kuroi to spend time with him. Manatsu excitedly declares that this is great progress for Kuroi's love life. Trying not to think too much about it, Kuroi notices her hands beginning to transform. She still can't believe someone like Arata could seriously be interested in someone like her when he could easily date any girl he wanted. Manatsu encourages her to change her perspective tomorrow. As a finishing touch, she styles Kuroi's hair so it resembles a pair of tiny horns. The next morning, Kuroi quietly gets ready for her date and tries to sneak out of the house. Rinko catches her before she can leave. Rather than admitting she's going on a date, Kuroi simply says she's meeting a friend. Before Rinko can ask any questions, Kuroi quickly rushes out the door. Watching her leave, Rinko becomes suspicious. At the meeting place, Kuroi nervously rereads the messages she exchanged with Arata. If her body starts transforming, she already has a plan to calm herself down. Suddenly, the crowd nearby erupts into excited whispers. Kuroi finds Arata walking toward her while countless girls stare at him in admiration. She wonders if this is simply the effect of seeing Arata in casual clothes because in her eyes he is sparkling. When the mascot walks away, Kuroi loses her cover. Arata immediately notices her and happily runs over. Delighted that she came, he warmly greets her. Feeling embarrassed, Kuroi instinctively covers part of her face and quietly tells him he looks different today. Arata admits he actually put effort into his appearance. He even consulted a stylist before choosing today's outfit. Hearing that makes Kuroi feel secretly flattered. Arata then admits he's happy to see her wearing casual clothes for the first time. He even blurts out that she looks incredibly cute before immediately wording that he sounded too forward. Kuroi feels her heart skip a beat. She desperately tries to calm herself, imagining the disaster that would happen if she transformed into Harugan. Fortunately, she manages to calm herself. She tells Arata she felt a little lightheaded before suggesting they go on a ride together. Still worried, Arata gently says they can always reschedule if she isn't feeling well. To his surprise, Kuroi immediately insists on continuing the date. Smiling softly, Arata reaches out and takes her hand. Fearing the contact might trigger another transformation, she quickly removes her hand. The two explore the park together while Arata points out all the guests dressed as characters from movies. Soon, Arata notices a romantic ride and excitedly suggests they try it. Kuroi worries it may be too much for her, so she suggests they ride a single-person attraction. Wanting her to enjoy herself, Arata happily agrees. Neither of them realizes they're being followed by Rinko, who has disguised herself as one of the park mascots. Rinko admits that Arata seems like a genuinely kind young man. Still, she knows that if he truly falls in love with Kuroi, it could become the most dangerous romance imaginable. After finishing one of the rides, Kuroi feels relieved that she isn't transforming. Only then does she realize she'd been unconsciously holding Arata's hand. Embarrassed, she quickly lets go and insists she can step off the ride by herself. She reminds herself that she has to stay on guard. The date continues with Kurowi carefully maintaining a little distance between them while Rinko secretly follows them closely. During one attraction, Rinko even manages to squeeze herself between the two of them. As they continue talking, Arata admits he really likes Kurowi's scream during the ride. He explains it's the first time he's ever heard her raise her voice. Arata spots another attraction meant for couples and suggests they ride it next. Nervously, she asks whether he thinks the mascot might ride with them again. Arata falls silent for a moment before awkwardly suggesting they do something else instead. He picks up a plush toy resembling a tiny kaiju. Kurowi studies the plush and can't help noticing how much it resembles Harugan. Arata then picks out a cute character headband and gently places it on her head. Flustered, Kurowi insists that only cute girls should wear something like that. Arata tells Kurowi that she is cute. He even offers to wear the matching headband with her. Kurowi stubbornly refuses, insisting that they aren't a couple, so they shouldn't wear matching accessories. As they continue walking through the park, a noticeable distance forms between them. Then she realizes the real problem. Throughout the entire date, she has turned down nearly every suggestion Arata made. She understands that the growing distance between them is her own fault because she's been guarding her heart the entire time. Watching from afar, Rinko begins wondering whether romance has come too soon for Kurowi. Just then, she overhears Kurowi suddenly inviting Arata onto one of the park's rides for couples. Arata is completely caught off guard and asks whether she's really sure. Kurowi firmly says she is. Hearing that immediately sends Rinko into a panic. Once the ride begins, Kurowi almost instantly regrets her decision since she can't help noticing how nice Arata smells. Sensing how tense she is, Arata gently reaches over and holds her hand to reassure her. But before he has time to look down, the ride plunges into a big drop. When the ride finally ends, she hurriedly tries to leave, claiming she needs to use the restroom. However, the safety belt pulls her back. Arata instinctively leans across to help release it. Growing flustered, Kurowi quickly creates distance between them the moment she's free. After finally calming herself down, she returns to find the mood between them noticeably heavier. Arata admits that he noticed Kurowi has been avoiding him all day. He assumes she only agreed to today's outing because she was too kind to reject him. Thinking he's been bothering her, Arata decides it's time for him to leave. Kurowi desperately wants to correct his misunderstanding. She rushes after him but realizes that much of her body has already begun transforming. Startled, she immediately backs away. When Arata makes what she mistakes as a fearful expression, her heart sinks. As she races through the park, people begin staring at her strange tail and monstrous hands. Meanwhile, Arata is searching for her with her things. He had picked up her bag and noticed her notebook. After reading it, you realize Kurowi had been preparing ways to run away from him all day. Watching from a distance, Rinko feels sorry that Arata had his heart broken. Still, she believes it's for the best because Kurowi can never truly be with a human boy. Eventually, she notices Arata disappear from sight and assumes he has finally given up. She decides to search for Kurowi. Meanwhile, Kurowi desperately tries calming herself inside a restroom. No matter what she does, her monstrous features refuse to disappear. She becomes terrified that if she can't return to normal, Arata will never speak to her again. All she wanted was to spend a single day as an ordinary girl enjoying a date with the boy she likes. Realizing that romance may simply never be possible for her, she gives up. The violent emotions cause her tail to lash out. Accepting her fate, Kurowi walks outside without caring whether anyone sees her. Soon, Rinko catches up to her and gently grabs hold of her tail. Still disguised as one of the park mascots, Rinko softly reminds her not to frighten the other visitors because this is supposed to be a place where dreams come true. Kurowi sadly asks whether ugly monsters like her are even allowed to have dreams. Those words leave Rinko speechless. As Kurowi sinks deeper into despair, she declares that she hates this place. She decides she wants to destroy the park. Swinging her tail in frustration, she sends Rinko flying away. The farther Kurowi walks, the more people instinctively move out of her way. Then someone suddenly grabs hold of her tail. She turns around to find Arata standing behind her. The moment she sees him, several of the spikes covering her body begin shrinking away. She immediately tries to hide herself again. Arata honestly admits he was surprised by her appearance. However, he says he's impressed by how committed she is to her costume. He excitedly assumes she's cosplaying as Johnny, one of his favorite characters in the park. The surrounding crowd quickly accepts Arata's explanation and begins believing she's simply an incredibly dedicated cosplayer. Arata happily concludes that this must be why Kurowi had been acting so strangely throughout the day. Kurowi quietly decides to play along. Before long, visitors are asking to take pictures with her. Arata then remembers the notebook he picked up. He tells her that he realized how excited she was when he discovered the final page with a cartoon sketch of them together. Embarrassed, Kurowi quickly snatches the notebook back, trying to hide how excited she had actually been. Just then, the evening fireworks begin lighting up the sky. Watching them together, Kurowi finally gathers the courage to lower her guard. She steps a little closer to Arata and shyly admits she had been looking forward to today more than she let on. When Arata smiles warmly at her, Kurowi can't help celebrating with one of the monster mascots nearby. Watching everything unfold from afar, Rinko is amazed by how openly Kurowi is acting around a boy. Although she still feels conflicted, she decides to let Kurowi enjoy the rest of the evening. Once the fireworks end, Arata asks whether she'd like to continue exploring the park together. Kurowi excitedly agrees and eagerly points out all the attractions she still wants to ride. The two spend the rest of the evening enjoying the rest of the day together. As Rinko heads home, she is suddenly called out to by Kotaro, a former colleague. As Rinko watches Kotaro play with Jumbo King, she remarks that he hardly looks like a biologist. Kotaro points out that Rinko doesn't look like one either. Rinko corrects him, explaining that she's a former biologist. She had decided to quit and just become a happy single mother. Kotaro asks if that means she has no interest in Harugan, whom he believes is female based on the kaiju's behavior and cries, and most notably her love-struck eyes. Rinko feels uneasy and asks whether he came all the way there just to hit on Harugan. Kotaro jokingly says that he did, prompting Rinko to march towards the door, preparing to lead him out. Before she can, Kotaro suddenly hugs her from behind. In a much gentler tone, he asks her to work with him again. Rinko notices his phone vibrate, so she kicks him in the shin and calls him a shameless player. Kurowi walks in, and the instant she sees Kotaro, she happily calls out his name. Kotaro immediately embraces her, saying how much he's missed her and how much sweeter and cuter she is compared to Rinko. After letting go, he hands Kurowi a bag full of souvenirs. Kurowi lights up with excitement as Rinko asks whether it's the noise Kurowi listens to. Kurowi passionately argues that metal is the most sublime form of music. Grateful for the gifts, Kurowi hugs Kotaro once again. Although he enjoys the affection, he gently reminds her not to get too excited because of her condition. He carefully asks whether they found a cure yet. Kurowi sadly admits they still haven't, though she has become much better at controlling it. Kotaro proudly tells her that he has another treat for her. Kurowi gets excited because she wanted them. Rinko immediately insists on tagging along. Kurowi quickly points out that the entire venue will be filled with deafening music. After thinking it over, Rinko reluctantly changes her mind. Compared to Arata, she decides Kurowi will probably be much safer with Kotaro. Rinko quietly pulls Kurowi aside and reminds her never to mention that she's Harugan. With everything settled, Kotaro tells the girls he'll be leaving. He tells Kurowi he'll be staying in town for a while, so she's welcome to visit him anytime. Kurowi is delighted by the news, although Rinko feels uneasy. Later that night, Arata messages Kurowi to tell her he had a wonderful time today. He briefly considers asking her out again, but remembers he has work. He's pleasantly surprised when Kurowi replies that she had fun too before wishing him good night. Meanwhile, Kurowi immediately wonders whether texting him good night was too forward. A moment later, Arata replies with a good night message of his own. Reading those words makes Kurowi's heart soar. For the first time, she fully accepts that she's fallen in love with him. She quietly wonders whether Arata feels the same way. But then she scolds herself that it's impossible because she's a kaiju. The day of the music festival finally arrives. As Kurowi and Kotaro enter the venue, they recall the last concert they attended together. Back then, Kurowi became so excited that her hands transformed. Walking beside Kotaro, Kurowi feels completely relaxed. Coincidentally, Arata is working at one of the festival's merchandise booths. Spotting Kurowi in the crowd, he's surprised to see her there. Kotaro immediately becomes suspicious and asks who Arata is. Nervously, Kurowi introduces him as a classmate. Assuming Kotaro is one of Kurowi's relatives, Arata politely greets him. But Kotaro announces that he's Kurowi's boyfriend. Kurowi panics and hurriedly corrects him, explaining that Kotaro is actually her mother's friend and the person who introduced her to metal music. As she frantically explains everything, Kotaro notices small spikes beginning to emerge from her back. Changing the subject, he asks Arata whether he's a model or actor. When Arata says he isn't, Kotaro immediately asks whether he's Kurowi's boyfriend. Kurowi quickly denies it. However, Kotaro says he'd rather hear the answer from Arata himself. The two quietly stare each other down while Kurowi nervously watches the tension build. Desperate to end the awkward moment, she points toward the stage and announces that she wants to hear a band perform. Once they're near the stage, Kotaro asks whether Arata knows anything about her condition. Kurowi admits that he doesn't, but insists Arata is a genuinely kind person who's different from everyone else. Kotaro gently warns that she hasn't met enough people to make that kind of judgment yet. He starts explaining how some men can be manipulative. Unfortunately, the band suddenly begins performing, making it impossible for Kurowi to hear his warnings. A little while later, Arata goes on break and spots Kurowi resting with Kotaro. Watching them, especially how happy Kurowi looks, he feels an unexpected pang of jealousy. Later, Kurowi manages to secure a place against the front railing before her favorite band's performance. Arata approaches her, explaining that he was allowed to leave work early and decided to enjoy the remaining performances. He asks whether she's really comfortable standing so close to the stage since the crowd looks intense. Kuroe explains she's used to it because she attends concerts with Kotaro all the time. Suddenly, the audience erupts with excitement as the band prepares to appear. Kuroe cheers along with everyone else but gets pushed backwards. Embarrassed, she quickly steps away and suggests they move farther back. Instead, Arata pulls her back toward him. Kotaro sees them and immediately starts marching toward them. Meanwhile, Kuroe feels her emotions spiraling out of control. Her condition begins acting up again and she quietly mutters that she can't do this anymore. Unfortunately, Arata misunderstands her words. Kuroe desperately tries to explain herself. However, Arata admits that he'd originally believed she was just shy. After seeing how naturally she interacts with Kotaro, though, he concludes that she simply doesn't like him. Panicking, Kuroe desperately wants to explain that Kotaro is nothing more than an uncle figure to her. Before she can get the words out, she feels her tail emerge. At that exact moment, the band bursts onto the stage. The roar of the crowd draws Arata's attention away for just a second. When he turns back toward Kuroe, she's already gone. Kuroe runs as far as she can. She regrets not telling Arata the reason for pushing away. The truth is, she bought expensive hair products for the first time. She even borrowed a cute outfit because she wanted to look nice for him. Recently, she had even started practicing how to bake cookies. For the first time in years, she found herself genuinely looking forward to tomorrow thanks to Arata. As those feelings overflow, Kuroe completely transforms into Harugan. The crowd immediately erupts into panic. Both Arata and Kotaro stare in shock at the giant kaiju standing before them. Meanwhile, the band simply grins, deciding there's no better time to begin their performance. Kotaro tells Arata to evacuate and leave, finding Kuroe to him. Arata grabs a pair of binoculars and climbs onto the stage to search for her. The moment he does, Harugan walks directly in front of him before lowering herself until they're face to face. Even in her giant form, Kuroe finds herself wishing she could somehow confess her feelings to Arata. Before she can calm herself, helicopters suddenly appear overhead. Annoyed, she swings her massive tail to drive them away. When she looks back toward the stage, Arata is gone. Heartbroken, she lets out a sorrowful roar before smashing the stage. Meanwhile, Arata and Kotaro escape through another exit while watching Harugan head toward the festival's main entrance, where Kotaro suspects Kuroe might be. Worried about her, Arata suddenly decides to go to Harugan. He explains that he believes he can lure Harugan away from the crowded area. Kotaro urges him to abandon such a reckless plan. Still, Arata insists on taking the chance because he needs to confess to Kuroe. Meanwhile, Harugan frantically searches for Arata while swatting away the helicopters pursuing her. She feels herself slowly losing control as her instincts begin taking over. Terrified she may never become human again, she regrets never confessing. She lets out another anguished cry before continuing her rampage. Arata decides he needs to act now. Kotaro calls after him, telling him he better come back alive so Kuroe won't have to cry. Arata positions himself where Harugan can easily see him. Harugan slowly lowers herself until they're at eye level. Arata gently tries speaking to her. Instead of answering, Harugan lets out a powerful roar. The sound startles Arata while Kotaro yells for him to run. Suddenly, another voice calls out. Wanatsu enthusiastically shouts for Harugan to stop. Unfortunately, the rope isn't nearly long enough to reach her. Harugan quickly loses interest and resumes her rampage. Once the helicopter lands, Arata rushes over to Manatsu. She excitedly explains that she flew over as soon as she heard Harugan appeared. Arata quickly explains that he wants to lure Harugan away because he believes Kuroe is still somewhere nearby. Manatsu confidently replies that Kuroe is Harugan's priestess. Arata explains that the real danger is the government. If Harugan continues rampaging, the military will eventually launch a full-scale attack. Manatsu suddenly panics, so the two of them hop on the helicopter to stop Harugan. Watching everything unfold, Kotaro grows increasingly irritated as the disaster response team tries to contact him. High above the city, Arata once again calls out to Harugan from the helicopter. The moment she notices him, she immediately begins chasing after it. Arata successfully leads her farther and farther away from the populated area. Once they're safely away from the crowds, Harugan's tail strikes the helicopter. Only then does Manatsu realize she forgot to give Arata a parachute. Harugan immediately notices him falling. Before he can hit the ground, she gently catches him in the palm of her hand. Looking into her face, he notices her eyes are gentled, similar to Kuroe's. Softly, Arata tells Harugan he's willing to listen because he can tell she's been trying to tell him something all along. Hearing those words makes Kuroe's heart flutter. Relieved that she was right about him, she carefully closes her hand around Arata, holding him close. Suddenly, something slams into her back. Turning around, she sees a tank opening fire on them. Not wanting Arata to get caught in the attack, Harugan quickly carries him somewhere safer. Sometime later, Kuroe has returned to her human form. Her first concern is checking whether Arata is alright. When he finally regains consciousness and sees Kuroe, he immediately holds her shoulders. A second later, he realizes she's only wrapped in a parachute and quickly pulls away in embarrassment. Kuroe scolds him for recklessly approaching Harugan. Arata then remembers Harugan and is worried about her. Kuroe looks at him with an unusually honest expression. She admits that she used to hate herself. However, after spending time with Arata, she slowly began seeing herself differently. Being with him made her start looking forward to the future. She gathers the courage to confess her feelings, but at the last second, the words refuse to come out. Even without hearing the rest, Arata quietly steps closer. He thanks her before admitting there's something he wants to say as well. He explains that watching Harugan desperately struggle to communicate made him realize something important. Looking directly into her eyes, he confesses that he really likes Kuroe. He asks if she'll go out with him. Kuroe softly accepts. Hidden nearby, Kotaro hears the exchange. Having just finished a phone call, he already knows their new relationship will be trouble. One evening, while replaying Arata's confession in her mind, Kuroe suddenly wakes with a start. Without wasting a second, she leaps out the window so she can safely become Harugan outside. People watch the giant kaiju make her way through town with a mixture of emotions. After eventually returning to normal, Rinko expresses concern over how frequently Kuroe has been transforming lately. However, Kuroe barely listens because her phone suddenly receives a message. She quickly retreats to her room and sees that Arata has sent her directions to their meeting place so they can walk to school together. Excited, she hurries out of the house to meet up with Arata because she hasn't seen him since the Metal Festival. The moment she spots Arata waiting for her, she's struck by how radiant he looks. During the walk to school, the two of them are awkwardly shy around each other because of their new relationship. Arata quietly laments the possibility that they may not be classmates anymore since it's a new term. Gathering his courage, he reaches for Kuroe's hand. Before he can touch it, one of his friends suddenly calls out to him from behind. Arata turns to greet his friend, intending to introduce Kuroe to his friend. To his surprise, she's no longer by his side. She has actually hidden herself around a nearby corner, suddenly realizing that dating her might cause Arata endless trouble. Convinced he'll lose popularity because of her, Kuroe decides to run ahead. Arata manages to catch up, but she speeds up even more. She tells him that, while they're at school, it would be better if they pretended not to know each other. Before she can continue, Arata firmly grabs her hand. He gently tells her that none of that matters to him anymore. More than anything, he's proud to call her his girlfriend. Just then, they hear the click of a camera shutter. Arata starts apologizing, but Kuroe apologizes for suggesting they hide their relationship. Still, she admits she's overwhelmed by everything that's happened and asks if, for now, they could just act like friends at school. Although disappointed, Arata agrees. Before walking ahead, he quietly tells her he wishes she'd be a little more selfish. Continuing towards school alone, Kuroe is suddenly approached by a young girl named Mao, whom she learns is actually Arata's little sister. Recognizing Kuroe's school uniform, Mao asks if she can bring Arata's lunch since he accidentally left it at home. According to Mao, Arata has been completely distracted ever since getting a girlfriend. He was even so absent-minded that he completely ignored the kaiju emergency alarms the previous night. Completely unaware she's talking to Arata's girlfriend, Mao cheerfully says goodbye after hearing the school bell ring. Left alone, Kuroe can't help smiling. At school, several students gossip about the rumor that Arata and Kuroe are dating. When they see Arata arrive by himself, they immediately relax, convinced the rumor must have been false. Suddenly, they see Kuroe grab Arata's hand and mention that Mao has entrusted his lunchbox to him because he forgot it. She quietly scolds him for forgetting it and for ignoring the kaiju alarm. Still holding his hand, she pulls him toward the school building despite several onlookers witnessing their exchange, though Arata is happy with her sudden boldness. Once inside, they realize they've been assigned to different classrooms. Although disappointed, they promise to eat lunch together. As they head their separate ways, people are still baffled about the nature of their relationship. Manatsu excitedly congratulates Kuroe on officially dating Arata. While happily praising her friend, Kuroe finally notices the curious stares everyone is giving her. She begins worrying about how her new classmates will treat her. Luckily, Manatsu reveals they'll be classmates this term and proudly promises to protect her. Hearing that immediately boosts Kuroe's confidence. Unfortunately, it disappears the moment several gals surround her and bombard her with questions about Arata. Things only become worse because Manatsu is also being crowded by classmates eager to become her friend. Soon, another popular girl named Raimu enters the classroom. Many of the students immediately recognize her and happily welcome her. Watching from a distance, Kuroe quietly admires how beautiful Raimu is. She nervously thinks that if someone like Raimu decides to pick on her, she'll have no chance of surviving the term. Eventually, Raimu hears the rumors about Kuroe dating Arata. She begins walking straight toward Kuroe. Bracing herself for criticism, Kuroe is convinced that Raimu is going to insult her. Instead, Raimu suddenly presses a knee against Kuroe's back, correcting her posture. She scolds Kuroe for slouching, saying it's unattractive. Noticing Kuroi's dry lips, Raimu immediately pulls her over to her desk so she can help. The rest of the class watches in complete confusion as Raimu fusses over Kuroi's lips. Carefully applying lip balm and a little makeup, Raimu finishes her work. Raimu finally introduces herself and even encourages Kuroi to call her by her nickname. Happy with her work, Raimu heads over to mingle with the other girls as Kuroi quietly stares at her newly colored lips. At first, she feels nothing has changed. Then when it's time to introduce herself to the class, she realizes she's speaking with far more confidence than usual. Glancing toward Raimu, she finds Raimu smiling proudly and encouragingly at her. During lunch, Arata immediately notices something different about Kuroi. Before he can figure it out, Mamatsu excitedly points out that it's Kuroi's lipstick. She even compares Kuroi's beauty to a kaiju during its magnificent evolution phase. Flustered, Kuroi hurriedly tries wiping the lipstick off. Arata stops her and tells her she looks beautiful wearing it. The compliment makes Kuroi's heart pound so hard that she secretly hides the hand that's beginning to transform. After school, Kuroi notices the lipstick has already worn off. She wonders where Raimu bought it because she genuinely loves the color. Although she considers asking, she notices Raimu chatting with other girls and loses her nerve. Still, she remembers how happy Arata looked when he complimented her. Gathering her courage, she finally approaches Raimu to ask about the lipstick. For a brief moment, Raimu and the others simply stare at her in silence. Kuroi immediately assumes she said something wrong, so she is surprised when Raimu happily invites her to go shopping. Raimu brings Kuroi to a cosmetics boutique. Inside the store, Raimu quickly finds the same lipstick she used earlier and hands it to Kuroi. Seeing how delighted Kuroi is, Raimu also offers to help her choose a matching blush. As they browse the shelves together, Raimu asks what sparked Kuroi's sudden interest in makeup. Kuroi decides to be honest and explains that she has an illness that changes her appearance. Because of those ugly transformations, she developed a deep insecurity about the way she looks. Those insecurities have even caused misunderstandings with the boy she likes. She shyly admits that the boy complimented her lipstick earlier that day. Now she wants to become someone who can genuinely feel confident in herself. As Kuroi pours out her feelings, she notices tears welling up in Raimu's eyes. Smiling warmly, she assures Kuroi that she's certain she'll become much more confident someday. Later, while walking home together, Kuroi insists on buying Raimu a replacement lipstick since she used hers. Suddenly, a burst water pipe sprays both girls from head to toe. When Kuroi opens her eyes again, she sees Raimu on the ground. But then she gets surprised at Raimu's appearance. Seeing her reflection in a nearby glass window, Raimu panics. She frantically searches through people's bags, desperately looking for something. Watching her, Kuroi quickly realizes Raimu must be searching for the makeup pouch she accidentally dropped. Picking it up, Kuroi holds it up so Raimu can see. Raimu immediately snatches it away and hurriedly reapplies her makeup. Almost instantly, her face returns to normal. Without acknowledging what just happened, Raimu calmly acts as though nothing unusual occurred at all, completely ignoring Kuroi's confused inquiry. Instead of heading straight home, the girls stop by a cafe. While waiting for Raimu, Kuroi notices that Raimu is taking a long time in the restroom. When Raimu finally returns, Kuroi is surprised to see that her makeup is gone. Without it, Raimu once again has the face of a gorilla. Calmly, Raimu begins reapplying her makeup while talking to Kuroi, fully aware of her appearance. She admits that she wanted to open up about it because she trusts Kuroi. Raimu explains that back in middle school, she was constantly teased for looking like a gorilla. At first, she didn't really mind. Instead, she leaned into the joke because making people laugh made her happy. Eventually, a boy she had a crush on told her that he loved her sense of humor. Hearing those words made Raimu feel grateful for the way she looked. The two even formed a comedy duo. For a while, she believed he liked her too, given how he would compliment her in private. Sadly, he already had a girlfriend. One day, Raimu accidentally overheard him making fun of her while talking to his girlfriend. The discovery completely broke her heart. After that, her mood noticeably changed at school. Then, the boy she liked approached her, making another joke at her expense because he expected her to laugh along. Instead, Raimu finally snapped. She lashed out at him and everyone else in the class. Consumed by her emotions, she climbed onto the school building and screamed about how much she hated herself. In the middle of her outburst, she lost her footing and fell into a patch of bushes below. The accident left her hospitalized for an entire month. Many of her classmates came to visit and apologize for how they had treated her. Even so, Raimu couldn't shake the feeling that they were still secretly laughing at her. That experience only made her hate herself even more. Raimu then shows Kuroi a nearly empty eyeshadow palette. At first, she followed the magazine's tutorials even though she believed makeup was pointless because of her appearance. One day at the hospital, another patient noticed her makeup and commented that she looked pretty. Those simple words gave Raimu the courage to keep trying. Since then, she has practiced putting on makeup every single day. She admits there were plenty of failures. Still, whenever she looked in the mirror, she'd encourage herself to keep going because she truly believed she was pretty. Recently, all that effort finally paid off. She found a style that genuinely makes her feel confident. Instead of reacting with disgust, Kuroe is deeply impressed by Raimu's story. Smiling, Raimu asks Kuroe to keep her gorilla face a secret from everyone at school. She then reveals her dream of someday launching her own makeup brand. She's already taking her first steps by posting makeup reviews online. Without thinking, Kuroe blurts out that Raimu could probably make even a kaiju look cute. Realizing what she just said, Kuroe hurriedly tries to pass it off as a figure of speech. Raimu simply laughs and says she'd love to create makeup that could make even gorillas and kaiju look adorable. Listening to her, Kuroe realizes Raimu is genuinely a wonderful person. She finds herself looking up to someone like her. When Kuroe arrives home, Rinko immediately notices the makeup on her face. She complains that Kuroe looks much prettier without it. Feeling like she's being treated like a child, Kuroe storms off to her room. Watching her leave, Rinko quietly remarks that she knows Kuroe is only wearing makeup because of Arata. Inside her room, Kuroe wonders whether Rinko is actually right. Before she can dwell on it any longer, her phone buzzes. It's a message from Arata excitedly talking about their upcoming field trip in a few days. Reading his message immediately lifts Kuroe's mood. Remembering how much Arata liked her lipstick, she decides to pack it for the outing. Unable to hide her happiness, Kuroe kisses her reflection in the mirror, pretending it's Arata. A second later, she jumps in embarrassment when Rinko suddenly opens the door to call her down for dinner. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next.